Yeah, I agree with you. And I think your comment earlier around, technology really moving to the front office is completely correct. And, we're seeing the modern technologists now, they've got the human skills to accompany the technical skills as well, in the same way as the best CFOs aren't necessarily the best accountants, but they've got that business engagement and they take the whole view of it, which I think, going back 20 years, technology being quite heavily acronym driven, they were hard things to work, early computers. It's all becoming a lot more, I guess, technology is becoming a lot more intuitive.
It is, and it's I'm a great believer that as a technologist, it's difficult to add value to a business if you don't understand how the business works. So one of the things that I did when I joined Melbourne Water was to take myself and my IT senior management team out to site one day a month. Right across, we've got about 64 sites around Melbourne. And we'd spend half a day working on strategy and that sort of thing, and then half a day with the business, understanding the business and understanding how that business worked, how our treatment plants work, how our water transfer systems work, how our catchment and dam management works, all of those sort of things. And it certainly taught us how Melbourne Water runs and how it operates, which was of benefit to us. But the greater benefit was the relationships that we're able to build with people right across the business. So the number of sites I went to where people would say, who are you? And I'd say, I'm the CTO. And they go, what's a CTO? And so, well, I basically run the information technology function. And they go, well, we've never seen one of you out here before.
Yeah.
So it was building those relationships was really critical, but understanding the business enabled us to identify opportunities where we could add value to it. And really simple examples, at the end of the day, that each of the sites, I'd always say to the site manager or team leader or whatever, if there's one thing technology could do for you, what would that be? And I had one example about at one of our treatment plants where the team leader said, if you could give me the ability to remotely open the gate to the facility when I'm not in the control room, that'll change my world. And so we spent, I think, $3,000 on a radio controlled remote control, and it absolutely changed his world in terms of his ability just to be able to get on and do his job and press the remote if people were coming or going, rather than get in a truck, drive back to the control room, press the remote, get in a truck, drive back. And so it's really simple things, but those types of things you never identify unless you're actually out on site with the people.
And looking at internally in organizations, which we're discussing now and some of the things you've shared, but what's the cost of digitalization? Does digitalization damage culture?
Yeah, it's an interesting one, because we've started to bring people back from work, and we undertook a research piece with the psychology unit of Melbourne University, which Paula Jeffs, our General Manager of People Capabilities, actually out talking about what we did. But we had about 60 employees that started at Melbourne Water during lockdown. And so their experience at Melbourne Water, they had never physically met anybody that they worked with. And so the challenges for managers and team leaders about how do you build a team culture when you've never physically met the person you're trying to build culture with. So we did a range of different things, pardon me. I did things like what we call virtual coffee catch-ups. So every Tuesday morning and every Tuesday afternoon, we'd run an online session. It was optional attendance. I'd give a brief about just what was happening in the COVID world, what was happening in Melbourne Water generally, and then we just opened it up for discussion. So it was almost replacing that incidental discussion that you have when you're walking down a corridor or you're in a lift and a colleague jumps in and you go, oh, while I've got you, blah, 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 that sort of stuff. So we also we found that employee engagement suffered during that second wave when Melbourne got up to 700 odd infections a day. So we introduced what we called Focus Fridays. So Focus Friday was no meetings and you were free to focus on the highest priority task that you had. So that might be, completing a report or a piece of analysis. It might be trying to clear your inbox. It might be a whole range, a particular project you were working on. And we found that was really appreciated by employees, just having a day where they could just focus on whatever the highest priority it was for them at the time. And then because of the research that we did with Monash University, as we started to bring people back to work, we quite deliberately didn't set any guidelines or rules.
Yeah.
So what we said to people is, you need to talk with your teammates and your team leader or manager and work out the best way you can optimize the performance of that team doing what we call blended work.
Yeah.
So working from home and or working in the office. And it might be in head office, but it might be working from another site, because people might, people who are close to down to Port Phillip Bay find it far more convenient to go to our Eastern treatment plant than coming into Docklands.
Yeah.
So, and it was interesting. We had some people that found that really quite empowering, and then we had other people who preferred more structure, saying, well, tell me how many days I need to be in the office, and then I'll organise myself.
Yeah.
And so we and the premise behind it is, well, we've never done this before, so we don't know what's right. So it's a bit prescriptive to go, well, you need to be in the office, 1 day a week or 2 days a week or 3 days a week. So we've just said to people, work out what works best for you and your team and adopt that. And we've just said to our team leaders or managers, the only rule is don't let your team members become isolated.
Yeah.
So that might be, I'm going to work at home 5 days a week, and 12 months later, I've still actually never come into the office and never seen anybody.
Yeah.
And I become disengaged, and, my motivation and performance and all of that starts to suffer.
Yeah.
So as long as we've got that covered, we've literally said to teams, you work out what works best for you and you do that. We've got a desk booking system. We can only have about 50% of employees back in the office at any point in time because of social distancing, although that's now starting to unwind.
Yeah.
And so we just said to people, work out what works best for you. And we've got some teams that are coming in 1 day a week. We've got some teams that are coming in 2 days a week, and some teams that are coming in 3 days a week. We've got some odd employees that couldn't wait to get back to the office.
Yeah.
And they're working here 5 days a week. And we've got other employees that, that are working 1 week in the office and in 3 weeks at home.
Yeah.
And we said, that's fine. It's whatever works for you.
And it's been working pretty well for you. It sounds like you've got all ends of the spectrum covered there, really.
Yeah, I think it's certainly employees and teams have felt much more empowered to go, well, you just work the way that you guys know the way that you're going to extract the best value and best performance out of your team. So you work it out between yourselves, and that's fine. Go ahead and do it. So we do track when people are in the office or out of the office. We've got a work tracking system, which basically people go in generally once a week or once a month to go, I'm going to be in the office on these days and I'm going to be working from home these days, and I might be on leave or whatever on these other days, so that we know where the workforce is over time and we can basically map trends and that sort of thing. And we're starting to see a gradual increase of people coming back into the offices. And I think part of that is we've worked from home for so long. People have become embedded in those work from home habits. So it's then becoming sort of quite difficult to break those habits.
And then just leading into that, because it's amazing conversation, but we are running short on time. Just want to talk about the human side of digital. And what would you say to, leaders about how you lead people in this new world when, you're not physically seeing people as much, maybe a couple of times a week, whatever it might be, but that's a different set of challenges, right?
It is, yeah. And it was one thing that surprised me is how much I enjoyed actually seeing people face to face.
Yeah.
And at the same time, it was quite awkward because you can't shake their hand, or, you've got to maintain your social distancing.
Yeah.
But the sort of joy that you felt actually just seeing someone in the flesh rather than on a screen, I was really surprised at how strong that emotion was.
Yeah.
And I think people, as they came back, started to experience that. And then as a result of then self-organising with their teams, then worked out, we'll all come into the office on this day or that day or this day and that day. And so we'll work back together as a team. So the sort of advice I would give people is the sort of things that we did. Don't be prescriptive about you've got to be in the office X days a week, or you've got to work from home X days a week, because it works differently for different people, depending on, if you've got young children, if you've got school-age children, if your dependents have left and that sort of stuff. Everybody's in a different circumstance with, school drop-offs and pickups and all that sort of stuff. And so to be prescriptive, I think, is a bit command and control, because we've got no experience about doing this, working in this blended environment before. So therefore, our view is, well, there's no right or wrong answer. And the people that understand how it works best for them are the people that are actually doing the work.
But I suppose just to sort of juxtapose that with that new, and that's really refreshing to hear you as a leader say that, but you've got to be very clear around people's accountabilities and deliverables, right? Yep.
Absolutely, 100%. And as I said to you, the pace of work increased. And people were working longer, but they were also working more productively. Which is, as I said, counterintuitive as to why would you bring people into an office if that's the environment. But I think that the human interaction is not to be underestimated. That physical, just be able to see people.
Collaboration.
Yeah. The fact that you don't have to wear a mask, so you can actually see people's facial features now. You can see if someone's smiling or frowning or whatever it happens to be. Whereas
pretty cool.
In the early days of return to work, when we had to wear a mask, I just found in the days where we wore a mask, when I was out in the street or whatever, it became a lot less social, because you actually couldn't see a person's face and, are they smiling at me? Are they frowning at me? And so you tended just not to say hello, or and as soon as the masks came off, there was almost this, oh, hi, how are you? And a lot more social interaction. So I think that not to underestimate that physical presence and what it means for humans and human emotion.
Yeah, absolutely. And just a final thought, because obviously, the pandemic's been a human tragedy at so many levels, but do you think in the future, as we learn and we move through this and we move to a different way of working, are you thinking, are you optimistic that we'll have happier, more engaged workforces?
I am. I don't think we'll go back to where we were. I think the way that we used to work is gone forever. And I think, the skeptics who thought, work from home is just an excuse to have a day off, or people get distracted, or those sort of things. I think all of those skeptics have been proven wrong. And I think that people generally want to do a good job and want to contribute and want to create value for their business or their team or whatever it happens to be. And that physical presence is not required, but it's not to be underestimated, the value of that physical interaction as well. So that's why we're calling it blended work. It's not work from home. It's not work from the office. And people and teams are free to blend in whatever way, shape or form they think works best for them. And that's been really empowering for our employees. As I said, a few have said, just tell me how many days I need to be office and I'll be there. But the majority have been able to, have a conversation with their teams and work out. And the majority of teams are all coming into the office on the same day or days, so that team can interact and have some physical presence with each other. And I don't think that's the value of that is to be underestimated going forward. Yeah,
and of course, digitalisation has played such a large part in that. And I do think that what you're talking about, people adjusting to, there are rules, but they're a bit different rules than the old time and attendance system, where you get a contract that says you'll be here Monday to Friday between these hours. That's from the Industrial Revolution, when we're all, people working in factories. It is outdated, right?
It is. So we had people working weekends because they found that they wanted to take time during the week to assist with homeschooling, for example. We said, that's fine. Or we had people that would take, time out during the day to do homeschooling, but then they'd jump online in the evening and, work through to 9 o'clock or 10 o'clock in the evening. And we just said to employees, whatever works best for you, that's fine. Just agree it with your teammates and your team leader.
Fantastic. Well, I think we're out of time, Geoff. So firstly, thank you very much for taking the time out of your busy schedule. Ladies and gentlemen, Geoff Purcell.